Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Saturday, every Wednesday, and sometimes on Monday. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning quarterly book giveaways.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth.
The way that I structure my reviews is I talk about the world, the plot, the characters, the things that I like, and the things that I don't like. I'll go ahead and link timestamps down below if you're interested in skipping to any of those particular topics. In Senlin Ascends, we follow a man named Thomas Senlin, and he is a headmaster at a school, and he has been idolizing this Tower of Babel since he can remember. It is this feat of mankind, this construction, this tower that is still being built, and every single level has something different about it, and it attracts tourists from all over the lands, and he has always wanted to go there. So on his honeymoon, he decides to take his new wife to the Tower of Babel, and they plan on staying on the third level where they have all of these spas and baths. But as soon as he gets there, he and his wife get separated, and he has to find his wife. He has to figure out what happened to her, if she has been kidnapped or if she has just been separated from him and is already on the third level of the tower waiting for him. So he goes on this mission to find his wife and find out what happened to her and save her if need be. And along the way, Senlin learns about the tower and the true mysteries about its construction and the different levels. And he comes across all of these different characters that may or may not help him try and find his wife. Senlin Ascends is an incredibly unique read, and I'm having trouble really describing it. I would describe it as a steampunk fantasy alternate reality type of book. And the reason I said that is that there's no fantastical elements, there's no magic or anything like that, but it's definitely not set in a world that we know because there are airships and things like that. I think that this book has a lot of steampunk elements, especially as we learn more about the tower. And like I said, there are airships and just a couple of things that happened in the first level that just seemed very steampunky to me. And at the same time, the Tower of Babel is drawn from our own history here on Earth, as well as some of the countries, lands, and names that the author uses, such as the land of Ur, which was an actual place in our ancient world. And the setting of this book is definitely not modern day, but then it's also not, ancient world either. It's very kind of Victorian era. There are railroads and things like that, and just the way that Senlin dresses and the way that he describes the clothing and the way that the men and women interact with each other just reminds me of kind of 1800s Europe or Americas. So it's a very unique setup for a story, and all of these different things work together just to create a very, very unique book. So like I said earlier, Senlin loses his wife at the beginning of the book, and he has to go through the different levels of the tower. No one knows how many levels of the tower there actually are, and it is said that the Tower of Babel is still being constructed. So Senlin goes through levels 1 through 3 in this book, and every single level he experiences something new. So the first level is filled kind of with debauchery and gluttony. The second level is filled with like drama and the arts and plays. And then the third level, where he and his wife are going to do their holiday, is filled with baths and, spas and just relaxation and rest and kind of things like that. But along the way, Senlin encounters a ton of different characters that at first he thinks he can trust them and that they're going to help him, but in the end, he ends up getting a different sort of experience with the people he comes into contact with. And he kind of has to learn the hard way how to deal with the people of the tower and who he can trust and who he cannot trust. The plot is fairly straightforward. I mean, Senlin is just going to save his wife, but you quickly realize that this story is not just about Senlin trying to save his wife, it's about Senlin going on his own personal internal journey as well. Now I'm going to talk about the characters, and really the only character that we spend a lot amount of time with is Thomas Senlin himself. And Senlin, like I said, was a headmaster of a school. He takes a lot of pride in his job. He loves being a teacher. He's bookish, he's quiet, he's not very assertive, and he waited till he was a bit older before he got married. So he doesn't have any children. He's a new groom, and he has been idolizing the Tower of Babel his whole life. He even teaches it to his children in school, and he walks around with this guide, Every Man's Guide to the Tower of Babel, which is kind of like a tour guide, and he has been reading this guide trying to prepare himself for his visit to the Tower of Babel. So it's definitely apparent that Senlin has this vision in his head of this Tower of Babel and his experiences there. And as soon as he gets there, he realizes that not everything is how he believed it was going to be. And maybe the Tower of Babel is not as great as he thought it was going to be. Senlin is just a really likable character because he just is so innocent and so naive, and you almost want to slap him in the face sometimes because he is so naive. This story definitely is going to follow Thomas Senlin's journey as he loses his naivety and has to learn the harsh truths of what it means to idolize something, and also come to terms with the lies that he has been told about the Tower of Babel. Because like I said, he was carrying around this guidebook, and throughout the book, he soon realizes that this guidebook does not portray the Tower of Babel the way that he's experiencing it. And one of my favorite parts of the book was at the beginning of each chapter, there's an excerpt from Every Man's Guide to the Tower of Babel. So we're reading what Thomas is reading, and it's ironic because what you're reading and then what Thomas is experiencing are not the same at all. And then towards the latter half of the book, we start reading from Senlin's kind of journal entries about his actual experiences with the Tower of Babel. So it's almost like a light switch got flipped on, and Senlin realizes, like, you know what? This is not how I thought it was going to be. This is how it's actually going to be. So I'm going to write the truth. And I absolutely love that. I thought it was a really clever thing to add into the story. And it was also symbolic of Senlin's own inner transformations. Now, there are some side characters in this story, and at first I thought that we were not going to see these side characters again because at each level Thomas enters, he meets some new people, obviously. But as the story progressed, there are some characters that reappear and that I know are going to be in subsequent books. So those side characters really aren't developed enough for me to talk about at any length, but just know that some characters that you see in the beginning of the book do reappear and will follow into the next book. Now I'm going to talk about the things that I liked. So the first thing I liked was the prose. Josiah Bancroft has beautiful prose. And not only is it beautiful, but it is fitting for the absurdity of this book. I loved how the author chose similes and metaphors and imagery that at first glance just sound out of this world, but put into the context of the type of story this is and the type of places that Senlin was, it totally fits. And I just thought that that was so clever. So it was beautiful writing, descriptive writing. I loved how descriptive it was, and just the imagery and the figurative language and just how weird it was done so well. The next thing I really liked was the steampunk elements. I'm always saying I can never really find a lot of steampunk books or books that have steampunk elements because it's something that I personally like. But like I said, there was airships, and then there is something going on with the tower that Senlin begins to uncover later on in the book that is definitely reminiscent of steampunk elements. And I just thought that it was extremely well done, and I wasn't aware of that going into the book, that there was so many steampunk elements. So if you're looking for like a steampunk fantasy book, then this is definitely one that you want to check out. The next thing I really liked was the setup for kind of an allegorical story. So I have a feeling that our author is trying to communicate a message or multiple messages and themes that is allegorical. So Senlin's visit to the tower, what the tower represents, what the different levels represent, and also Senlin's journey himself. I feel like that is a huge allegory for multiple things, and I feel like it's going to be revealed as the story progresses. So I don't really know yet what these things symbolize. I don't really know yet what our author is trying to communicate to the reader, and I think it has to do with the history of the Tower of Babel and the symbolism with the different levels. And also, I noticed that our author used the color red a lot in describing a lot of things, and I'm curious to see if that color red is symbolic of something. I don't know, maybe I'm just completely making that up, but I am super curious to continue this journey and look at the story as a whole and kind of see what the author was trying to communicate to the reader with all of these different elements. So I don't have any idea yet. I have some theories, but it's just something that I'm gonna have to figure out as I go along, and I'm totally here for it. The next thing I like was just the utter absurdity, bizarreness, and weirdness of this story. This author's imagination is, I don't even know how he came up with this stuff. I don't even know how you get that type of imagination, but just the different levels and the different things that were in those levels and the different things that Senlin had to do in these levels and just the descriptions of them was so absurd and so bizarre, but it fit. I think if I had to describe this book to someone, I really wouldn't even know where to start. Now going on to my dislikes, and to be honest, there's only one dislike I had for this book, and it really isn't even that big of a deal, and it really didn't detract from my rating at all. And the dislike would be when Senlin first loses his wife and he's trying to figure out how to find her, what to do next. I felt like Senlin didn't feel enough sense of urgency. So if I lost someone I loved and they might have gotten kidnapped, I feel like I would be in utter inner turmoil. I would be upset, freaking out, stressed out, worried, sick. And I feel like those emotions are very appropriate emotions, and I don't feel like Senlin had those emotions. Yeah, he expressed his worry about his wife, but it was just kind of like, well, I'll find her, you know, I'm trying to get to her. Like, if that was me, I would be knocking down walls, I would be punching people to get through those different levels. But I feel like there was just a little bit of like lack of sense of urgency when it came to Senlin and trying to find his wife. And the whole book is about him trying to find his wife. And the whole book takes place over about 6 months. I was not expecting it to take place over such a long amount of time. I just felt like there could have been more portrayal of Senlin's emotions to make them really believable to me as the reader. All in all, Senlin Ascends was a really fun steampunk fantasy book. It's like nothing I've ever read before. I absolutely loved it. I loved the world, the setting, the characters. I cannot wait to pick up book 2. I've already bought books 2 and 3, and I do plan on continuing them very, very soon. And I gave Senlin Ascends a 5 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend it. Okay, you guys, that is it for my review of Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book or plan on reading it, and I will see you guys soon in another video. Goodbye!